want to talk about destiny theory, but not what destiny theory is, but how to identify destiny theory and tell whether or not you're kind of on the right path.
I said earlier episodes that man would have to come to a place where his value system would not be bound by good or bad, right or wrong,
right,
but rather wisdom or deceit.
Right.
If man can use that value system to then make choices in life, then man can ensure that any choice made out of wisdom, regardless that it's a choice that leads to a path that is maybe difficult, or a path that is easy, or a path that is wealth versus a path that is poverty,
right,
that as long as the path to wisdom is chosen, then that experience would then be kind of part of the destiny theory and the overcoming of the experience.
Yeah. If somebody was trying to switch to that style of thinking, it's still in a way right or wrong, though, isn't it? Because you're like, well, wisdom versus deceit. If you pick deceit, obviously that's the wrong choice.
So when you look at things from right or wrong or good or bad, what you're doing is creating a prison of values, meaning like you're saying these values are good, these values are bad. The difference between choosing a path of wisdom versus a path of deceit is that when you choose a path of wisdom, wisdom in itself isn't necessarily going to drive you to a good outcome or an easy outcome. So an example of that would be that you might choose a path of wisdom and that might lead you down an experience that is very difficult for you to overcome. Meaning like you might go through this path of losing a girlfriend, losing, a family member, things that are painful internally.
Right.
These painful specific concepts still force you to have to overcome that pain.
Right.
Let's say, for example, you have a good or bad choice to make. You can make a good choice and say, this is good for me. Like, this is the right choice to make for me.
So I guess,
but it could hurt everyone else.
But I guess it depends on what you look at as good then, because I think that if you knew something wasn't, like, for example, my car that I bought, right? You would say that that's a path of deceit. Obviously, It's not a path of wisdom. But when I look at it, I also think of it as a bad choice. So that's why I say, like, what's the difference between bad and good and bad and wrong?
Because when you choose good or bad,
yeah,
you're defining that based on the outcome. Was the outcome good or bad? And then it was bad. Therefore, the actual choice was bad. It shouldn't have happened.
Right.
When you look at life that way, you're almost looking at it as an experience that you've learned from, where the choice that went through the experience that wasn't necessary occurred.
Right.
If you would have gone through that BMW dealership or wherever you bought your car, you would have sat there and said, am I deceiving myself by lying to myself that I can afford this or that this is the better financial option for me right now, right? You basically convinced yourself by lying to yourself, right? That's what I mean by picking a path of deceit.
So what happens when somebody knows? So what happens when somebody switches from wisdom to deceit and they know that this is the wise path, but their emotion and their impulse always pushes them to go the deceitful
So nobody
way.
said it is easy to make a distinction from wisdom or deceit, and nobody said it's easy to choose wisdom over deceit. Like when people look at good or bad, like I said, they've gone through the experience, and whatever outcomes occurred after the experience, they go back and label the experience as good or bad. But if we choose our value system to wisdom and deceit, we are bringing the value system in front of the choice, not behind it.
I see what you're saying.
Do you see what I mean? Because then the intention of the choice holds a lot of weight.
Doesn't that come? That's the same thing as proactive versus reactive, then.
Right. It's making sure that the intent of the choice is basically going to take us through a necessary experience, rather than one that is driven on us once again ending up in the same path.
Can you give a prime example of like something that a lot of people can relate to, like a decision that most people have to make within their life?
We'll use the same decision you talked about earlier. You went to a dealership to buy a car you know deep inside you shouldn't have bought because financially it wasn't the appropriate decision to make. You had facts and data pointing you to that direction. You had people that were more experienced than you in that topic telling you this was not a wise choice, and you chose, I really want this, this is like my dream and I'm going to pursue it, even though you knew that at the moment, it's like bad timing, right? It's like this isn't the time to go through that phase. Yeah. There was a moment of growth for that moment where you choose to take that responsibility, and then the inability to sustain that. Mm-hmm. So then you dropped financially even below the term of where you were at the time of purchase. Right. So now you have to rebuild to even be in a place to even yet make that same choice, right? So the point is not that you should have never owned the car you wanted, or greed is bad, you should have never bought. The point is that when you know that the intent of the decision was really to deceive yourself into something, then you have now harmed yourself. It's like, hey, I built a foundation in my house. I know I shouldn't have used bad wood here, but I'm going to get away with it, right? And then when the whole thing collapses, you go, even the foundation's gone, and I got to rebuild that now from the ground up. And someone goes, well, that's a lot of work now. Yeah, which basically I've set myself back 10 years by choosing to put the wrong wood. Now, is it that I put wrong wood not knowing it was wrong wood? Or was it that I knew that this wood was not the right wood, and I deceived myself into thinking I could get away with it, rather than have the correct intent to saying, let me use the correct wood because someone else may live here and get hurt as a result, right? So the intent of choosing holds a lot of weight. And that's why this belief system is so important. When people don't understand, they go, all you're saying is we go from good or bad, right and wrong, and wisdom and deceit. No, basically we're shifting our thought from being the byproduct of a circumstance to being like, I control the experience, and now my wisdom or deceit value sphere is no longer making me the victim of the experience and saying, I was young, I didn't have the experience, what do you expect of me? It's not my expectation of you, it's what is your own expectation of yourself, you know? And when we move the wisdom of value forward, then we're saying, my intent created the experience, versus the other person saying, I experienced and it sucked. You know, like it wasn't what I expected.